Good afternoon. You guys hanging in there? You have a good conference so far? Getting there, almost done. You can hang in for a little longer. You gonna be all right? You sure? Okay, I can feel some of you drooping a little bit. See if you can kind of have a drink of water, perk up some. Good, cool. Well, I'm very happy to be talking to you today. I have the privilege of working with a lot of CEOs and politicians, but I've also worked with a number of HR executives, some from very large corporations, and I understand some of the challenges that you face. And at a conference like this where so much ground is covered, one of the things it illustrates is how broad the field of human resources is. Would you agree? It includes many, many, many different things. And I want to bring that up to you because it's a risk in your role to let others define for you what human resources means to them. And if you do that, you can find yourself doing things that aren't as much fun. Doing a lot of compliance stuff and legal stuff and solving problems others don't want to solve, dealing with people others don't want to deal with. And I'm not saying that that's not your job. What I'm saying is if you let others define the job for you, you may find that it's not as fulfilling as you thought it would be or as it once was. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Just curious if I'm hitting a sore spot here. Yeah. Because I've met HR, very high-level HR people. I had a client who was the head of HR for AOL, another one who was a very high-level HR person in Intel, another at the state of California. And this is a pain they often expressed to me, was that they weren't getting to do really exactly what they wanted to. And so I want to suggest to you a different way of looking at the role of HR than perhaps you or others traditionally do. And that is the role of a human resources leader as a leader of change within an organization. Often people look to the CEO to be the one to lead change, which is great because usually the CEO has lots of power. But often you are better informed about what changes are required and how the world is changing and how the marketplace is changing than the CEOs are. Because there's a lot of research and other things that come out through the field of HR and are more easily noticed from your position than they are from the position of other leaders in companies. So for example, there is a significant transformation going on in business right now that some of you may be aware of around compensation and benefits. That's based in research that at this point is getting on to be about 40 years old, but is poorly distributed and published and understood, which has to do with intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. How many of you know about that? That the research from like Alfie Kohn and Dan Pink have done a great job of summarizing this, that money is not the motivator we thought it was. That offering people money to work harder and work better and do a better job usually, not only does it not work, usually backfires. Now, I've talked to audiences of thousands of CEOs at this point, and most of them have very little clue about that. And in fact, they're very resistant to the idea. They really like the idea that they can buy performance. It's easy, it's convenient, it makes sense to them. The problem is it's not actually how human beings are wired. And in your position, it's actually easier for you to familiarize yourself with that stuff and then be the agent of change within the organization to bring that to others. And I saw a lot of you didn't raise your hands. I recommend that you educate yourself about this stuff. It's actually very, very important if you're doing benefits and compensation, because the tendency is to want to tweak the plan just right to get engagement as high as possible. Yes? And productivity as high as possible, low turnover. Would you agree? No? Yes? Yes. Okay, good. Doesn't work. The various methods being used to raise engagement are fundamentally failing. They are not working. And they're not working because what we've been taught by economists about how human beings work isn't actually true. If you give me your card later, I'll happily send you some of this research. It's fascinating stuff, and I really think that you should know about it. The other big change that's coming through the collective right now, which you also may be aware of, is about the millennials coming into the workforce. these people who were born after 1980 are motivated very differently than previous generations. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You've seen that research or run into that in millennials yourself. Yeah. What's happening is the millennials are having higher turnover and lower engagement than previous folks in the same jobs, and are even less influenced by money than previous generations were. So millennials will leave jobs if they don't like the company's purpose or their boss's values, even if they don't have another job lined up. They'll accept a job that pays them less if they like it better or feel more passionate about the company and the good it's doing in the world. And the executives, most of them who you are working with, are older folks, mostly men, who don't understand this at all and have a lot of trouble grasping what's happening. And not grasping what's happening poses a real threat to organizations. The entire banking industry is under threat because the millennials won't give their monies to banks as a group. They're really not that interested in giving their monies to banks. The banks are stodgy, old paradigm organizations, and they're invisible to the millennials. The millennials want to find brands that they're excited about, that they feel passionate about, companies that are doing good in the world, and they become very loyal to them as customers and as employees, and will promote them to all their friends using social media. Right? But if they don't like the way the company looks or smells or feels, they won't work for it and they won't buy from it. They vote with their dollars. This is a trend that you can also educate yourselves about and educate the other executives in the organization. These are two examples, but fundamentally what I want to get through to you is the idea that you, as the head of HR, are ideally positioned to be an agent of transformation inside your organization. And that often the executives who traditionally are looked to for that work are too busy doing other things and not educated about the stuff they need to be educated at to play that role. But you can play that role. You can ask yourself, how can we transform this culture? You can ask yourself, how can we make this company a more purposeful one? How can we change how we treat people in a systematic way so that they feel better about working here? And learn about some of this research. Fundamentally what's going on, by the way, when companies are trying to tweak compensation plans in order to get people to be more engaged, it's basically a form of manipulation, right? I'm trying to do this to get you to behave the way I want. That's the bottom line. Now, it's not unethical because everyone knows it's happening. It's completely transparent. The employees know this. You know this. The executives know this. It's not like any rules are being broken or anyone's behaving badly. The problem is that trying to manipulate people doesn't feel good to the person being manipulated. Right? Just because you're manipulating me well doesn't mean I have to like it. Doesn't mean it's going to work. You understand? And a lot of the way HR is traditionally done is from a behaviorist Skinner psychology kind of point of view of treating the people kind of like lab rats and trying to figure out if we treat them like this or this or this, will they behave the way we want them to behave? And I'm saying there's a completely other way of doing it, and you can be the one who initiates that. I had the privilege of doing some work with Howard Behar, the president of Starbucks, and he actually doesn't like the term human resources at all. I interviewed him for my community of leaders, which you all are welcome to join, by the way. And in this interview, he said, human resources is a really problematic term because the term resource means something that's available to you that you can use or buy or sell. It's like an asset, right? This truck is a resource, or this phone is a resource. I can give it away or keep it or buy it or sell it, right? People are not resources. They're not assets. They don't necessarily behave the way you want them to behave. Right? So he pushes back on the whole idea of human resources. The very term itself sets up a problematic dynamic between you and the people that you're trying to work with and trying to help. Now, there's lots of companies already behaving in these new ways. They have excellent data, which I'm happy to send you, showing how much more profitable they are when they work this way. We've seen companies, for example, find their higher purpose and then have their profit go up by 1,200% in 3 years. Right? There's real limits to how much engagement and how much upside you can get doing things in the traditional way. Now, as I said, this stuff is less well known in Israel than it is in the United States and Europe. In the United States and Europe, this stuff is catching on very, very quickly. And if you do what I'm asking you to do and take on this role of change agent within your organization, your company can be on the leading edge of a change here in Israel. And people say, well, Tim, how do you know that the young people in Israel feel and think the same way? I know they feel and think the same way because they went and created all those tent cities, right? This is the same logic of young people who want to change the world and want to work for companies that change the world. And they want to buy products and services from companies that change the world. Ultimately, the greatest beneficiary from you, if you take on the challenge I'm placing in front of you, will be you. And the reason is because your engagement as an employee is also at risk. If you keep doing things in the old way and you keep doing what others expect you to do and cleaning up their messes and doing compliance work and all this other stuff, which I'm not saying you can completely get out of, but if you allow that to be the sum total of your job, over time, your engagement is going to go down. Your level of fulfillment is going to go down. And ultimately, at the end of your career, looking back, you'll be able to see some good that you've done. You'll have earned some money. You'll have helped organizations. But really, long-term happiness, the research shows this, comes from helping other people. You can get short-term happiness from excitement or pleasure, right? Like a good meal or good sex or something like that. But it doesn't last very long. If you want long-term happiness, you have to do something that makes a difference to other people and a difference to the world. Fortunately, in your role, that's not difficult. You're ideally positioned in such a way that you can do that all the time. The question becomes, for you as an individual, what's the way that's going to work best for you? What's the way that's going to allow you to have the greatest positive impact on other people, which will make you a more effective HR leader, make your company a more profitable company, and you a more fulfilled and happy human being? The difficulty is that what will make you most fulfilled and what will make you most fulfilled and what will make you most fulfilled is not going to be the same. And this is one of the big problems with how we organize ourselves in companies, is we create these little slots and then sort of jam people into them, right? So you and you and you are going to have to behave differently and engage in different activities in order to get the fulfillment I'm talking about. Right? And the word that I use for this is purpose, yaud, right? That there's some way, yeah, I got a little Hebrew, not much, just a few. I know purpose in several languages. That the way for you to have the greatest impact on the world in your lifetime is some series of choices that I call the path of maximum impact, right? There was a CEO client of mine who was a very skeptical technical guy. I know you don't have a lot of skeptical technical people here in Israel, but in California we do. Anyway, actually he was from Texas, so a very skeptical technical CEO of a high-tech company, and we were working on his higher purpose, and he kind of rejected the whole idea. Well, what do you mean, Tim? Do I have to do my purpose? I said, no, you don't have to do my purpose. Your purpose, you can do anything you want. He said, well, how do I know? He says, if I can do anything I want, how do I know whether it's my purpose? And we went around and around and around. Finally, he said, okay, Tim, I understand what you're talking about. He says, when you say purpose, what you mean is the path of maximum impact. The series of choices that I could make that would cause the greatest positive impact on myself and the world. I can choose anything I want, but this would be how I would have the greatest impact. And I said, yes, that's exactly it. And I'm very grateful to this guy for that definition. It's a perfect definition of purpose, right? It doesn't rely on anything spiritual or religious or strange. It's just a series of choices that would allow you to have the greatest impact on the world. If you do that, if you seek that path and walk that path, and let me say it's a little tricky to find it, happy to, in another venue, explain to you methods for doing it and such. We don't have time for that today. But if you can find it and walk that path, and many of you have had that experience. How many of you have had the experience at some point in your life you knew you were doing what you were meant to be doing? You could tell by how it felt. Raise your hand. Most adults have had this experience at some point in their lives. They don't necessarily now know how to create it at will, but they know what it feels like when they're having it. And most people, given the choice, would prefer to be able to have that as much of the time as possible. I know that's true for me, right? But you have to know what that path is in order to be able to walk it. But if you walk that path and take those steps, not only will you create benefit for others, but you create a lot of benefit for yourself. Work becomes more fulfilling. It's easier to have happy relationships. You're actually worth more when you're doing that. Remember, this is the most positive impact you could have. You're worth more as a resource, as a leader, when you're having the greatest possible impact you can have. And people love following a purposeful leader, someone who's walking their path. They like to be behind someone who knows where they're going. Right? And if you've got a plan and you know where you're going, they will want to get behind you. And ultimately, you will live longer, have fewer diseases, fewer accidents, less risk of Alzheimer's, right? And men, if you don't live your purpose and retire, you've usually got about 3 years to live. Okay, seriously, and the older you are, the shorter it is, right? So you work till 65 and go out to play golf for the rest of your life, 3 years, you're dead. Women, you got more than that. I don't know why. We have a sort of auto timer or something, right? If we're not living our purpose, we just kick over. But there's a lot of personal benefit to you. So my challenge to you is to decide, first and foremost, do I want to be more fulfilled? Do I want to walk a potentially challenging path that would have much greater impact on the world, that would allow me to have greater impact at work, greater impact on the employees in my company, and potentially in the rest of my life as well? Not everyone wants that, by the way. I was very shocked when I realized that I knew how to find anybody's purpose in a matter of a couple days. I thought the world would beat a path to my door. But it's very interesting. Most people don't want to rock the boat. I know this sounds good, but most people are like, that sounds great, Tim. I'm going to go back to doing this. Thanks. Bye. Right? There's a smaller number of people who really feel the urge, who really feel the call. Who there's some voice inside that says, you know, I know there's something more I'm supposed to be doing. I know I personally am supposed to be doing something to make the world a better place. I may not know what it is, but I know that's true. Raise your hand if that's you. Come on, fess up. I call you change agents. Sometimes they don't even know it till I ask, and they go, ah! They see their hand up. Good. So there's some people for whom this is very important, very essential. For most folks, the good news is it's optional. You don't have to do this. It's fine. You can be happy other ways. Right? But if you really want the most fulfillment out of your job, out of your life, and want the greatest impact on the employees in your company, and the greatest impact on the leaders who you, I'm saying, are the shepherd of, right? You're supposed to be educating them and helping them not do anything stupid that's going to destroy the company culture. Right? The greatest impact on them, on the employees, on the company, and helping the company to have the greatest positive impact on the world. Your individual purpose in life, your ya'ud, your shlichut, is very important. This gives you the map. It tells you how to go about having the greatest impact. And then once you've seen that, you can decide whether you want to do it or not, right? Just because the GPS tells you to turn left, you don't have to if you don't want to. Oh, I'm going to go to that store over there instead. You can ignore the GPS, it's fine. But it's useful to know what that path is so you can make educated decisions about it. And if you choose to walk it, then get to have that really intense feeling of fulfillment and passion that comes from knowing that you're doing what you're here to do. So that's my challenge, accept it or not. Thank you very much. I hope you had a wonderful convention. I'll hang around over here if anyone has any questions, and thank you very much for having me.